I'm Melissa Shanahan, and this is the Velocity Work Podcast, episode number 19. This podcast is for attorneys who are running their own firms. We explore tactics, tools, and stories related to pushing past simply lawyering well and into building a successful firm. Working in your firm and working on your business are two very different things. This podcast focuses on the latter. What is up, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode. Today we are talking about confidence. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is because there's some really great information out there about confidence, and does it come from an internal process or does it come from an external process? And people have differing opinions about this. And confidence is a piece of success. If you don't have confidence, then you're likely not to stick your neck out and take the risks you need to take and all of that. The people I work with are inevitably have a bit of confidence, right? They started their own firm. There's something great there. So there's a great starting point, but it does require that you continue to do things you've never done before. And that process is important to pay attention to. Like, how do you operate in unknown territory, right? How do you try to make sure that you are on track for success in those areas without a bunch of self-doubt and a bunch of, mindset crap that holds you back? So this episode, what I have done is research from some of my favorite teachers out there on the topic and pulled together some things that I really want you to think about. And we'll do a bit of a summary at the end. I'm going to start with, because it's the most simplistic way of thinking about confidence, but it's still great. I love it, actually. Dan Sullivan teaches the 4 C's formula. And it's like his outline for achieving confidence with something, essentially, for being able to break through. And so that, that'll give you confidence. So I'm going to walk you through this. What I will say is that if you have not listened to episode number 17, which talks about your compelling reason, it talks about more than just your compelling reason, but the compelling reason is the most important piece of that formula that I give in the podcast. You need to go back and listen to that because it ties in so heavily, even though it's unspoken, with what Dan Sullivan is teaching in his 4 C's formula and what some of the other principles I'm going to be sharing with you today. It's an unspoken element. And I think for you to fully wrap your head around it, it needs to be spoken. You need to understand that's a big piece of it. So I want you to go back. I would highly recommend that you listen to episode number 17 before you listen to today. So in the 4 C's formula, and as we go through this, by the way, I want you to think about something that you have built confidence with, or that now you have some confidence that you didn't used to have in an area of life. One of the easiest for the listeners of this show is becoming a lawyer, right? There was a beginning point to that journey, and there is where you are now, and you're certainly more confident in your skills as a lawyer than you were when you started, right? So I want you to think of that journey as we're talking today through this episode, but then this can apply. Everything I'm teaching you today can apply to anything in your life, whether it's personal or business. So with the 4 C's, I'll kind of give a high level of his 4 C's and we'll break it down. He says that with the 4 C's, the first C is commitment. And this is where you basically decide to commit to something. And then the second C is courage, because it requires courage to keep showing up for that thing. You don't really know how to do X, Y, and Z, but you're committed to it. You're committed to a result. So you're going to keep pushing and keep showing up. So there's a lot of courage required with that. And that it's the most painful piece of his formula is what he says. Then after that, once you show up enough and you've practiced enough courage, you start to develop a capability that you didn't have before. And then once you have that capability, you keep going, you just get, the more capability you have, the more confident you are in your capability, right? And so confidence is sort of this result of having commitment, having courage to keep showing up, and then you develop you become more capable with that thing. And so then the result is confidence. Well, I think that is, and actually I used to teach this when I, especially at the old consulting firm I worked for. This is something I would go over with teams when I would go in and train and teach. And I believe in it wholeheartedly. Since then, I have gotten much more clear on really what's behind his formula. I don't think he would disagree with anything I'm going to talk about on this podcast, but he essentially has just nailed it down to something very simple, which is helpful. But if you're anything like me, it helps. The more knowledge really helps you inform your thinking and the way that you operate. So I want you to think about episode number 17. And as a high level review, which this is not enough. If you haven't listened to it, you need to go back to get the full picture. But at a high level, essentially sort of the recipe for success is that you have this really high level of commitment, like hard commitment. A lot of people say they're like going to train for a half marathon and they're committed to it, but they don't follow through. So I'm talking like hard level of commitment. And the what will inform your level of commitment is if you have a compelling reason to keep you going. So, and then if you do have a compelling reason that keeps you going, your commitment's really hard. You're like stuck to that, your commitment. And then because of that, you keep showing up, you keep showing up, you keep showing up through failures and through disappointments and through small wins and all of it. You keep showing up until you hit success. Well, that keep showing up phase is resilience. You practice resilience until you hit success. So it's, the model sort of looks like you have to have a good compelling reason that will drive your level of commitment. Your level of commitment will determine how resilient you are. And if all of that's in line and good to go, then you will hit success. It's just a matter of time because your resilience is the definition of resilience is continuing to pop back up even when you've been knocked down, right? So you'll get there. Maybe it doesn't happen as soon as you thought, but you'll get there because you're resilient. And you're resilient because you have a really hard commitment. And you have a hard commitment because you know your freaking reason for showing up for it. So that is what I talked about in episode 17 at a super high level. Well, what's interesting is when you line up what I talked about in episode 17 with Dan Sullivan's 4 C's formula, essentially when he starts with commitment, he says, commitment is the first step. And what I want you to pay attention to is, yes, commitment has to be there, but in order to be committed hard, you got to have a compelling reason, right? So it ties into what we talked about in episode 17. So real commitment needs a strong, compelling reason. And then courage is his next step. And when I talk about resilience in the model in 17, it requires a bunch of freaking courage because, you have to be able to get back up again. Sometimes that means you've been humiliated. Sometimes you fell on your face and someone saw it. And sometimes, even if no one saw it, it's still courageous to continue to get back up again when there's no proof of success. There's no you don't know for sure the outcome. You can't because that's just not how this works. And so you still show up anyway. That requires courage. So his courage level, which is his second C, it is the resilience phase. It takes so much courage to get back up and get back up and get back up and keep slogging through. Sometimes it feels like a slog. That might sound negative, but truthfully, sometimes it feels that way. So the courage is required. And then you develop capability, which will give you confidence. That's what he says. And really, what we talked about in 17 is that you resilient enough, you keep overcoming your obstacles, you will reach success. It's just a matter of time. And that success, it's like you in that resilience phase, even before you reach success, you're becoming more capable and more capable and more capable and more capable. And then you hit success, which he sort of talks about as a breakthrough. So and once you break through, you have confidence. So I love how in line these things are, and it's just different language, but it is the same thing. If you go back and listen to episode 17, I actually think at the very end, I reference confidence as a byproduct of what we talk about in episode 17, but it is worth digging into confidence itself more because people think they need confidence before they go out and do something. And what I want you to know is that is not the case. It works the opposite way. You get confident because you keep showing up and because you have that resilience. And so then confidence is sort of a byproduct or one of the end results of resilience, of continuing to show up no matter what. So that is one kind of way to think about this in terms of confidence. I've given you episode 17, which that in and of itself begets confidence. And then now we've talked about Dan Sullivan's 4 C's, which is commitment, and then, which requires, like, if you are really committed, it requires courage for you to keep showing up. It has to be exercised. And then capability is developed through the not giving up, which is through the resilience. And then you get to success, and then that's when you feel confident. And it's because you've been through the ringer with everything. Like, your way around this. So now you feel confident. And confidence, I will say this, I think confidence is really important to think about as a business owner, because confidence, like the feeling state of confidence, it is pretty powerful. Like, as you set your next goals, like you do this all over again, right? Because you set goals, then you've reached this level. It's like, oh, wow. Like you're confident in what it took and where you are because of all the hard work. But then you just set your sights on a new goal, right? And we're going to talk about this a little bit more, but it's not just for the sake of hitting goals, but it is what is required of you in order to reach that goal. And so, you don't know how to, if you already knew how to do that, if you were super confident in it, it's because you would have already done it. So you're embarking again on this new journey, this new cycle of having to commit super hard and keep showing up, period. That's what it boils down to. So it's like, once you kind of get to that, you did the work, you keep showing up, you get to that next level, then you experience this confidence that is pure fuel to go to the next level. So confidence it's important to pay attention to. It's important to know when you feel confident and know why you feel confident. I think oftentimes being cocky is being confident without warrant. Like it's almost like entitlement goes along with cockiness. And that is not what I'm talking about here. Confidence is this real, it's a much deeper inner state. So that brings me to the next teacher that I love. And this goes right in line with everything, like the coach that I love so much, that I've learned from years. Her name is Brooke Castillo. She talks very similarly about confidence as the next person that I'm going to bring you, which is Ed Mylett. Ed Mylett says confident people are confident because they've built a reputation with themselves. They don't need any external validation from other people. And they have a pattern of keeping their word to themselves. And when you do that, it creates self-confidence, right? So it's almost like, and he talks about giving yourself credit for it. Do it and then give yourself credit for doing it. Like recognize it out loud. And that kind of seems silly to people because it's almost like, okay, I said I'm going to do this thing. I show up and I just do it. And it seems like, well, just keep on chucking to the next thing. Except that it's really powerful to acknowledge yourself for what you showed up for. It's almost like recognizing it is pretty powerful towards gaining more self-confidence, which essentially what he says is self-trust is self-confidence. It's the exact same thing. It's self-confidence is trusting yourself. And when you consider that when you put something on your calendar, you say you're going to do something and you show up and you actually follow through and do it, well, there's no one else that's going to know if you don't do it, right? It's just you and you. You show up and you do it to be able to say out loud, I followed through when I said I was going to. And, in whatever form you wanted to do that, I followed through with, I said I was going to do X and I did X, or just simply, I followed through when I said I was going to. Saying it out loud sort of forces this acknowledgement that helps your brain start to trust Then when you say you're going to do something, you actually follow through. So you start to trust yourself more and more, which then helps you become more self-confident. He also says, if you're constantly influenced and moved by what people think about you, it means there's a deficiency in what you think about you. And I love that. It's so true. And probably all of us have experienced this at one point or another, or still do. But if you feel influenced or moved by what people think about you, it means there's a deficiency in what you think about you. So the key is not some esoteric belief system. It's the pattern of keeping the promises that you make to yourself. That's what builds confidence. So this is why I say to clients and otherwise, when it's go time, there's no room for emotion. Example, if you're training for a half marathon, but you don't feel like going out for the run that's scheduled that morning, you have an early morning run to wake up for. There are those who don't have a compelling enough reason, which means they aren't committed hard enough, and therefore they lack resilience. So when things get hard or feel hard, they just don't have that resilience to do it anyway. So they don't keep their promise to themselves. They stay inside, they stay indoors, they stay in bed, or for example, but they don't go. There are those who do know and they keep top of mind their compelling reason, and their level of commitment is real. So they keep their promises to themselves no matter what. It is the same with business and growth and personal, anything in life that you want a specific result. It is about the behavior that you are exhibiting that's going to achieve the result. So I love what Ed Mylett has to say on this. He also goes on to talk about how important it is to separate yourself from the outcome, which I love this because there's a subtle mental shift around this for many people when I get into this with people. But separating yourself from the outcome, like there's nothing wrong with having goals and outcomes. In fact, you need them. And he says the same. He agrees with that. You need outcomes and goals in mind, but you need to take solace and have peace of mind that you are behaving in a way requisite to eventually producing success. It's your behavior. Keep showing up. Keep your word to yourself. Give yourself credit every time that you do keep your word to yourself. So it's important that you need these goals and outcomes to shoot for, but once you set it is time to put your head down and do the work and keep showing up in a way that's going to produce that result. If those goals that you set define you, whether you hit them or not, you will have a hollow existence. The focus should be on the behavior because that's what will get you there. And, even if let's go back to this for a second. The goals that define you, whether you hit them or not, you will have a hollow existence. That is because if you do hit the goal, it's almost like this, there isn't fulfillment in it because then you have to set another goal in order to feel fulfilled. So you're constantly chasing something. There is no fulfillment in the journey whatsoever. And that, even though it may not sound detrimental to some of you, it is. And if you've lived that life, you know it because your life feels hollow. It feels empty. It's just on to the next, on to the next, on to the next. There's no enjoyment except for the fleeting moment when you get there. And then, by the time you get there, it's really no big deal that you got there because it was so gradual. Like it was almost inevitable. By the time you get there, it was inevitable that you were going to get there. There's no fulfillment in it at all. And the same thing is true if you don't reach the goal. If you're so attached to the goal itself and you aren't looking at the journey and you aren't sort of paying attention to how you operate through it to get to the goal and you fall short, then you just blame yourself and it's like the world is ending because you didn't hit the goal. You're missing the point, right? So your goals and outcomes, I think when I see clients and others make the goal mean something that it doesn't mean. The meaning should be placed on your behavior that's going to take you to that result. If you show up in a way that where you honor your word and you do the things you said you were going to do, that's why a plan is important, right? You need a plan to get to your goals. And then it is your job to just continuously show up. And when you do show up, then focusing on that and mastering that, success is inevitable. It is inevitable. So when you honor your word and you do the things you say you're going to do, that is what produces confidence in yourself. Self-confidence is self-trust. And that is the thing that will allow you to repeat success again and again and again and again and again. No matter what level you're at, the next level is inevitable because you've got this thing down. That is the win. The self-trust is the win. Now, the other thing I wanted to share with you is that, so this is everything we've talked about is very internal. It starts and stops with you inside and internally. And I do believe that at its core, that is self-confidence, is self-trust. I really believe that. And no one can give that to you outside of you. It is you. It is you working through, having a compelling enough reason, a good enough reason to you, doesn't need to matter to anybody else, a good enough reason to keep your commitment. You're so committed. And so you keep showing up and you're very resilient and you have courage and all of that. You keep on. Success is inevitable because of you just keep showing up and honoring your word. So that, I believe wholeheartedly, is something that people need to wrap their heads around at a deeper level than what they do. And I don't care where you are with that, really wrapping your head further around it or mastering it more is the key, you guys. It is the key to, when you don't feel like showing up, you show up anyway. You honor your word to yourself. That's where everything starts and stops. So I think that it's not talked about enough. I think that people quickly get a plan and they that's what they want, right? They want a goal and they want a plan, but they don't really follow through on the plan as hard as they should. And that is a problem because they won't see the success that they could have. And so I think that's why you guys have heard me on previous episodes talking about it is about what I'm interested in talking to people who are setting lofty goals for themselves. Of course, I want them to hit their goals. Of course, I want them to grow. But I know that if we don't have the conversation about how you're operating and who do you need to become in order to achieve that goal, this is what I mean. This is what I'm talking about. And I'm never not going to talk about it because people want. It's sometimes people will come to me and they want a quick fix. They want to pay me to fix something in their business for them to finally reach this goal. And there's a bunch of external things that we can do to set them up for success, but it doesn't matter what we do if they don't have this honor for showing up and doing the things that they said they were going to do. It's not going to happen the way it could have. So now shifting a little bit to the external, because I think that there's some value in just mentioning this with confidence. Simon Sinek has a unique perspective on self-confidence. And so there's something else here to add that I think is worth mentioning for further fuel. It is, and let me just get straight with this. It is not required. What I'm getting ready to cover is not required for self-confidence, but it can be helpful to speed things up or keep momentum. The people you surround yourself with can help accelerate self-confidence. The people in your life that say, you've got this. I believe in you. Whether you succeed or fail, I'll be by your side. There's some value to that. Your number one fans, right? And I think also that this is Jim Rohn's quote of you are the sum of the 5 people that you hang around the most, or the average of the 5 people you hang around the most, whatever. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. That is kind of why it really sets you up to hear the things that are great to hear when you're working hard for something. So that's valuable, and I don't want to discount that. Surrounding yourself with the right people is an important piece of fueling self-confidence and helping you to stay the course of honoring and showing up when you say you're going to show up. But again, I want to make sure that you guys know it's not required. So I don't care if you have a bunch of people around you that just, you feel like they want to see you fail, or they don't understand where you're going and they aren't that supportive. It isn't a reason or an excuse to not have to not have self-trust, to not honor your own word to yourself. It's totally possible with crappy people around you to honor your own word. But I do think it's worth mentioning that always really trying to make sure that you are surrounding yourself with people that, even if they don't understand it, they don't care. They are your number one fan. I think that can be really useful and helpful. So in summary, self-confidence really is self-trust. It's honoring what you said you were going to do. And I'm talking about the little moments, your behavior day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute. It is the wee things. There's a soccer coach from Scotland named Bobby Clark. My husband trained under him for years. And if you know anything about soccer, Bobby Clark was coached by Alex Ferguson, who's like this legendary coach. And Bobby Clark has drilled into all of his players' heads. It's the wee things. He says it in this cool Scottish accent. But my husband and all of his teammates, they refer to that constantly. It's the wee things. There is no big magic wand that's gonna make you a winner, or it is the small things. And so, he had them on a training level, paying attention to the wee things, mostly only just the wee things, and the big things took care of themselves. The wins took care of themselves. The records that they set took care of themselves, and it's because they focused on the wee things. So when I say, it's about honoring what you said you were going to do, I'm talking about the wee things. If you're someone who has a poor track record with yourself, start small. One thing a day that you say you're going to do, and you do it. And then you give yourself credit for it. Recognize out loud that you followed up on your word. You followed through on your word. You showed up. And so it doesn't have to feel like a huge feat either. It's more about the practice of trusting yourself and really start small. And I have clients that start small with there's one meal a day where they plan it and they don't veer from it, even if they feel like something different. So maybe they have this really awesome, healthy, hearty salad that they said they were going to have at lunch, but they feel like a burger when lunch time comes around, but they do what they said they were going to do with the lunch, right? With the salad. And so that is their one thing a day. And I have heard, actually, Ed Mylett talks about when you're starting this process of beginning to earn trust with yourself, because you do have to earn it, that starting with your body, you don't have to become a machine, but starting with things that have to do with your body is sometimes the easiest place to start, because you have so much control. And there's not a lot of variables. You can make sure that it's the easiest thing where you can show up without something else getting in the way. So whether it's a workout, a certain time every day for a certain set amount of minutes, or whether it's what you eat, what you're going to put in your mouth one time a day, but start very small and honor that for a week or two. And that's it. And you'll gain this self-trust. And then you can sort of stack on top of that. And then you can stack on top of that, and you can change to a different area of life. So if you start with, eating well one time a day, or following through with you planned and that's the thing, I should back up. You can't just say, I'm going to eat healthy. That is not what I'm talking about. In order for your brain to start to trust itself, you have to say, you have to plan out exactly what you're going to do, and then you have to honor your plan. That is very important. So that's why you can't just say, I'm going to have a salad. I would say, I'm going to have this salad with chicken and these toppings. This is the dressing. That's what I'm going to have tomorrow for lunch. And you do that. And once you honor your plan enough times in a row, it becomes you start to exercise that muscle of self-trust. And then maybe you can take it and apply it to something in business. And, I'm going to do this every day this week for my business or whatever. I'm going to set aside this time to do something that I'm going to start on time and I'm going to end on time and I'm going to get it done. And you do that for a week. So you start to just build this momentum and this trust with yourself. And then you can know, like, no matter what you schedule, you're going to follow up. You're going to follow through with it because that's how you roll. And that is the stuff that will help take you towards success and hitting your goals. Okay, that is what I have for you today. So self-confidence, it's a biggie and it's a fun topic to dig into. It is the best, I think, some of the most important work you can do on yourself, because if you do get self-trust right, if you can develop this, it is the thing that carries you to the next level, to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. So totally worth talking about. Thank you everyone for tuning in today. I can't wait till next week's episode. I will talk to you very soon. Thanks so much for listening to the Velocity Work Podcast. If you've enjoyed this podcast and you run your own law firm, you have to come see if the Velocity Work client experience is for you. Head over to hello.velocitywork.com to set up a free call. We can learn more about one another, answer any questions we may have for one another, and determine if the Velocity Work client experience is a right fit. I hope to connect with you soon. Show notes from this episode can be found at velocitywork.com/podcast.